Hi, so today I'm joined with Dan Petrovic, who has always been someone I've admired within the industry. He's always been two steps ahead of the game. Back in 2013, there's a famous video now out there about how he said people would now be chatting with Google in 10 years' time and how agentic search will be around. People couldn't believe it back then, and roll on 12 years, it's where we are today. So, the first topic I want to kind of run through with you is what do you see now for the future of AI SEO?
Loaded question, the best kind of question because there's a lot to unpack. Uh, Obviously, the future of SEO has many additions. But we've been through this before with introduction of various little modalities and voice search, conversational search, mobile first, and so on and so on. So we've been through all these adaptations, and I see SEO as sort of evolving and embracing AI as just another modality, another type of interface that sits between search and the end user. So there's going to be a lot more that an SEO needs to do, and I would imagine some companies will start specializing, and some consultants will start specializing. So some will say, "I'm an AI SEO," just like some people like, "I'm a app store optimization guy. I'm an a mobile SEO or like a local SEO and so on and so on." AI SEO is an interest for me because it's been an interest for the longest time, like you said. And we finally got to the point where technology is accessible and it's widely adopted. And all these technologies that were only available to very large corporations like I remember Quill, you couldn't get access to it unless you're a multi-million dollar corporation. Um, and so all these technologies are available to us now. So I'm like dog off the leash type things. Just like everything is fun, everything is useful. I came out of my retirement to get back into this. And I'm very much enjoying it. Why am I enjoying it? Because um, I see fantastic opportunities for new methods and things to develop. One of them, since I guess you're asking for more specific, actionable things that we could do. One is understanding model psychology. And I know that sounds a little bit maybe abstract or vague or hippie, but it's not. And so what I've been spending my last 2, 3 years is understanding the field of mechanistic interpretability. So mechanistic interpretability is understanding what models do and why, and what happens in their neural network when they do that. So similar to human psychology, you get input through ears, eyes, tactile, whatever, smell. So that's multimodal input gets into your brain and something happens. We don't know what happens, right? And tick tock, tick tock, and then output comes out. We make a decision. So psychologists, and this is what SEOs have to do now. We are now model psychologists. Um, so in psychology, I'm going to simplify, but basically we deal with, because there's a black box that's the brain minus the, I don't know if people can see. Can you see that far back? There's an EEG on my other desk there.
Just see your two screens behind on the table.
Okay. Yeah, there's a electroencephalogram on my other desk. You plug it on your head and you see the brain waves, and you can kind of get a glimpse of what goes on, but it's not very sophisticated. Um, so in SEO space, we're now going to have to be probing the models and understanding what they do and why they do it. And um, effectively, what we're trying to understand is, yeah, there's input and then there's output. Now, the thing is, with open source models like Gemma, Llama, DeepSeek, all these others, we can actually get down to the very circuitry of what they actually do and why they do it. I'm not suggesting every SEO needs to geek out to that level and do all that. My findings indicate that small models like Gemma, built on the same data and technology that Gemini has been, has the same multidimensional geometry as Gemini. Basically, semantic concepts clustered together. You create vector embeddings for one, vector embeddings for the other, and they're rotated differently, and they still collapse on the same entities, same things. Um, Apple fruit, Apple technology, right? So um, then I realized there's a lot of work for us to do in model probing, entity associations, and so on and so on. And so, on a more practical level, the opportunity is in understanding how different inputs to the model affect its outputs. This is RAG, a retrieval augmented generation, which is basically just search. So the future of AI SEO is dealing with the interpretative layer on top of search. That's it. Models are too big, too expensive to train every day. They are trained a couple of times a year. Models are released, and then they rely on search for up-to-date information, for factual stuff to prevent hallucination. And there's no way around that. Not at this level of technology. Um, so we have this opportunity to analyze that. But there's also something below that, and that is the model's primary bias against or towards brands and associations in their entities. So there's an associative element. So when I say Dijon AI, what do you associate with this brand? And then the model says 1, 2, 3, 4, and lists the things. That's a very smooth, elegant, efficient way of probing models. Basically mapping the associations that the models have towards a brand. Then you flip that around and you say, AI SEO, what brands do you associate with that? And you start saying, Dijon AI, iPull Rank, MSIV, blah, 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 all the others, right? So you're doing bidirectional probing, mapping that space of models' choices, which reflects the model's pre-training, post-training, reinforcement learning, fine-tuning, etc., etc. So this is the stuff model would say even if it wasn't grounded in search. And you need to understand that because this influences its choices once it's furnished with the grounding data. And so these, to me, are the most important things to understand. Now, of course, these top-level concepts do break down into specifics. For example, we used to have click-through rate optimization. Click-through rate optimization adjusts titles, descriptions, schema, and so on to make the SERPs more clickable, more attractive for humans. Now we have selection rate optimization. Selection rate optimization, there's no clicks with machines. They select things. So we are now trying to make your brand, your search grounding snippet more attractive for a machine to select. And understanding what works and what doesn't work is a kind of a big deal. The good news is that surveying people is really difficult because you got to do this, surveys and polls, collect the data. Sometimes people are tired. Sometimes they are lying to you, this and that. And it was kind of like an annoying process. Surveying models is pretty sweet.
You know what? I've never heard anyone talk about selection rate optimization. I've seen a lot of people obsessed in the SEO industry with CTR and conversion rate optimization. But like you said, with regards to the LLMs, there's no clicks. There's just selections that they're pulling in from the data. And there was something else there that you touched upon with regards to the human brain. And I'm going to try to kind of do it from a human standpoint. So if you come to a restaurant and you get a plate of food, and on that plate of food, it's presented very nicely, you actually quite like the taste of it, but you don't like, let's say, the smell of the food. It could be a specific fish and it doesn't smell very nice, but it might taste and look presentable. Or it could be that it smells nice, but it don't really taste very good. And you spoke about the input into the brain, and then the black box in the brain decides whether they're going to order that again or not order that piece of food again. That's like how humans, and sometimes it could be like the smell of the food far outweighs the taste, that they can't have that again. What I'm trying to get to here is these multiple models that are coming along with regards to whether it is within RAG, which could be semantic content, it could be third party corroboration, reviews, and all different things. Within that, in your opinion, with regards to the future of AI SEO, is there anything that you feel outweighs? Is it literally down to your semantic content network and how deep you go, touching upon the entities and entity SEO and touching upon those, or is third party, like, is backlinks important? But with, I'm not bothered about the page rank and the link juice. That third party corroboration of reviews proving what you're saying on your website becomes more important, or is it the content on your website and semantic content's now become more important than ever? What's your thoughts of, because some people seem obsessed with on page and some people are obsessed with links. You don't get many that kind of merge together and understand actually just do all things correctly and all things right. What's your thoughts on that? Is this something that you're feeling at present has got a Midas touch, so to speak, with ranking in LLMs, or is it just do everything the best you can?
So the models are really quite simple. They get plain text input or plain multimodal input. There's none of that sophistication that we have in the search pipelines, believe it or not. So search is way more complex and way more sophisticated than current models that sit on top of search. And so you could think of it this way: there's no subtleties there. The model will receive the plate of content, and there will be no smell. There will be nothing. It'll perceive that plate through its vector representations, and it'll have an initial perception. I'm going to like this plate. But what happens? The model doesn't actually get the whole plate. It gets one slice. So you supply a whole pie through your content and all the aspects of it, but the model only gets a slice. And this happens because when you have a RAG pipeline that serves your content to the model, they look at the query, they look at the fan-out queries that decompose that query into multiple aspects. They run multiple searches, collate the search results, trim most of it, and supply the finals, right? So all that stuff that you were just talking about, the semantics, the links, the reviews, the nuances, all that is just search, old school search. What's brought back to the model is trimmed down set of search results, and for each search result, we have a sample, a taste, a pie slice that the model gets to sample to make the evaluation what it will generate based on that. That's a huge problem, actually, because you might have a page that's like 2,000 words, and model will pick 400 words or 500 words out of that and represent your content, your product, your service, your brand, your message in that little condensed form. It will not be doing abstractive summarization, so it's not going to be destroying your words. It picks verbatim snippets. So this is called extractive summarization. So it picks the exact sentence word for word that you said, like a chunk, puts it together, ... ellipses, and then merges a few little segments that are scored by a cross encoder that runs in the background pipeline, and puts together a grounding snippet that represents your page relevant to the entered prompt. That, plus all the competing results, plus the prompt, gets smooshed together and then goes to the model as input. That's it. No schema, no sophistication, nothing. Just plain text, unless you also have like imagery and stuff that goes as multimodal input to the model. That's a bit of a different story. Like if you attach an image to say AI mode or Gemini, GPT, but that also gets treated as a vector as well. So you've got this dilemma. Will my content be represented well enough, and how will model speak to my products and services and brand based on the small sample that it sees? That's the currently biggest challenge that we have. None of the sophistication hits the AI models just yet. Most of it is actually in the traditional search.
Right, that's interesting. One last question on this with regards to the future of SEO. You mentioned there query fan out. Now, within on Dayjam website, you've got you can type in a query, a long query, and it'll give you 10 different query fan out kind of terms, which is kind of improving how you would try to do a search. If I'm doing a search for, I'm looking for an accountant in Manchester that's going to save me the most tax as I move to Dubai. Obviously, there's multiple kind of intents within there of what they need to do. Now, query fan out then will come back with international accountant tax advisor or something like that, and it might come back with different ones, and it comes back with them 10 different query fan outs. Is the aim of the game now for someone who's looking to try to manipulate rankings in the LLMs to try to make certain that they score high across all 10 of those query fan outs? And is it an overall consensus score for all 10, or do you only need to be touching upon a few? How does that work with the query fan out and the scoring system of all them different variations of keywords? Because old school methodology, people used to go after query string matching, BM25, trying to rank for a specific query. They've got it in the title, H1, URL, a few times sporadically in the content, and that's good enough for Google rankings in the old school traditional search ways. Nowadays, as the fan out comes along, I know there's query augmentation in Google, but with query fan out, how does that work with an overall consensus score? Is it literally add them all together and that whoever gets the highest score comes out on top, or is there completely something different in the way RAG works?
It's the top five.
Top
Top
five.
five. Yeah, top five. For when you retrieve hundreds of these different results. By the way, old school techniques are still working because they're cheap. Google still relies on like the first round gets picked up the cheapest method possible. Semantic search kicks in only on a re-ranking level.
Yeah.
But so let's say you run 7 different fan out queries based on a prompt, which address different dimensionalities, different aspects of the prompt. So that will bring, let's say let's simplify it. So that brings us 700 different results. Let's go that deep. So what happens? There's an attrition filtering that happens in the back end process. So in this RAG pipeline that serves Gemini 3 in AI mode, for example, or eGPT, those results are collected and then trimmed down to a narrowed down selection. So some of them will be from one query, some of them will be from the other query. So there's a level of layer abstraction you have no control over, right? And you as an SEO, you can't really do anything. This is again traditional SEO, just trying to rank well for those queries. So tools like you mentioned that we have the query fan out tool, they help you think about closing the gap between the queries that you currently rank for and the queries that you could be ranking for, but you just not because you didn't think of it. The query doesn't quite address, or I should say, the content that you have doesn't quite address that query, gives you ideas and so on. So when I think about these types of queries, I actually call them synthetic queries. I have 2 types of synthetic queries. One is, I'm going to simplify, but let's say Dijon AI. What queries would a user type in, non-branded queries user would type in to Google to find results from this brand? And then I generate a variety of search queries from model's head as to what it thinks is relevant to my brand, and then it gives me a number of things. So that I do a Venn diagram. I find what's already in Search Console, what's not in a Search Console, what overlaps, and what is the gap. So then I try to close the gap through generation of the content. So that's pure synthetic queries. Fan-out queries are a form of synthetic queries that are resulting from the decomposition of the prompt. And you could have a fan-out query that actually matches your Search Console data. You already rank for that organically, but there'll be a subset of that that will become one of your synthetic queries that are not there yet, an opportunity queries, right? And that becomes an optimization opportunity. Now, if you do this a lot, you will realize that there's almost an infinite amount of new fan-out queries that you could generate, and you just keep the loop going, and you just go endlessly. So you can't just generate 1 million content pages, one for each query. I don't think that's a good strategy. And Google's pretty good at semantic understanding. So I think you need to bring it down to the basics, understand what are the primary entities you're trying to cover, what potential search queries stem out of those, and group them, create a graph of concepts and how these map out. So once you've mapped out the entities, the associated synthetic and organic queries, PPC queries, then you sort of branching out into prompts. You're doing prompt generation, but I would draw the line at prompt tracking, right? So this is a hot topic in AI SEO, and people are like, oh, they have okay, I have 100 different prompts, and I'm tracking these prompts every day to see how I'm ranking for them. Absolute nonsense. I don't see any utility in such things. I do this myself actually as a one-off research. I get my insights. I change the prompts. I provide insights, but regular tracking is absolute nonsense. So there's another aspect to that. That is that when you come to an ongoing tracking, you want to probe those relationships, and I do it in two ways. One is the probing that I mentioned earlier, associative probing. But there's another aspect. Let's call it relevance probing. If you saw Dan Petrovic in the RAG pipeline suggested as one of the results for the prompt of this user looking for XYZ, would you recommend Dan as a consultant for this problem? Yes, no. That's it. Allow model to say output one single token, yes or no, and repeat that 10 times or 100 times and come up with the statistics. 68 out of 100 times it said yes. So that's working as an SEO, working within the probabilistic nature, embracing the probabilistic nature of the models. Models have the temperature, other parameters like top P, top K, and they're allowed to sample within the bucket of probabilities when producing outputs. You want to see what your brand, your product, your service, how it fits within that. So that's more aligned with how we need to think about research and optimization and so on and so on.
On that, you mentioned temperature, and then you mentioned that if there was going to be, let's say, 6 queries, you then said 6,000 results. Do they always look at the top 100 then, or do they do the top 20 on the search results? Like how deep do they go with regards to when they're looking at search?
Oh, the models don't make those choices. When I was talking about temperature and sampling depth and width and all that, that's just next word prediction. So basically, how much energy does the model have to sample, how wide and how deep? That's it. All that other stuff, again, just traditional SEO. Anything to do with search results and how much and what's presented is Google's software choices in the back end, processing the information that will be served to the model as sort of like on a silver platter, here you go type thing, right? So all that, like to influence all that, you just need to influence the traditional search. To influence the model choices, you need to be probing and testing and surveying the models, how they operate within certain sentence structures, within let me bring it to a more concrete example, actually. So there's a tool that I made available for everyone to use called Treewalker, treewalker.ai. And the tool allows you to enter your brand or a website, and it says a sentence about you. Does two things. One is not allowed to sample into search, speaks its mind about what your brand does, and then completely separate API call, it's allowed to see the search and allowed to see your website, and then answers the same thing. In the third call, it's self-evaluating. How did I do before seeing the search, and how did I do after the search? How close was I to getting it right? And then what we do is, that's the first sentence, and then we allow the model, for all the things, for all the probability paths of all the things it could have said about you, we allow it to walk every single path by following different probabilities at different junctions. So what we look for high entropy points. Any moment in the model's completion in the autocomplete where he wasn't confident, like saying Dan Petrovic is an Australian, and then not so sure what to say next. So then you have a high entropy token from which a branch out is more likely to other things. When you have a low entropy token, model's very confident about you and what you do, and it wasn't very likely to flip flop to other things that it wants to say about you. That is the target for optimization for modern AI SEO. You're looking for the low confidence spots where the model is not so sure about you, and you try to reinforce those with on-page content, outreach, and things like that. On-page, so I'm talking in familiar terms, right? On-page, off-page, because I like to do that because people connect with something familiar. But you can't just go start digital PR or link building or like on-page optimization without understanding where are the weak spots in the model's understanding of your brand and how it associates you with the things that you want to be associated with.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're talking then, let's say about link building and off page, are you more bothered about it's mainly about confidence and clarity nowadays than let's say link juice and page rank? It's going, I'm going to reiterate who I am, what I do, get that confidence score up and that clarity of who your brand is or who you are as an individual, and looking at that third party corroboration more than let's say page rank and DR and what people traditionally was looking at.
Well, as far as model influence, model is unaware of PageRank and authority. There's no authority signals flowing to it or PageRank. It doesn't get any other inputs other than the text and multimodal input. So the only source of authority the model has to draw on is its training,
Yeah.
and that's really hard work. Some people think, oh, I'll just do a bit of digital PR and I'll influence the model training data. No, you won't.
Yeah.
This is a monumental endeavor, and it would take. It's kind of like moving a glacier, right? It's really really heavy inertia to actually influence model. You need to do some like real heavy lifting in terms of like digital PR. Links play no role. It's more of a co-occurrence type thinking, association. Where does it see you? Where are there discussions in forums and Reddit, and how notable you are in its training data. That's really the strongest initial signal that just trumps everything else. So when model is presented with search, and I did like for Google, for example, I really do mean top 5 results is what it gets, and from those top 5 results, it gets like little bits and pieces from the page content. So it has very little to go by. So what I do is I try to have my content um, as condensed as possible while remaining readable and friendly for humans, right? So get to the point, give answers very quickly. I avoid having too much fluff. In fact, I have a model, deep learning model that I trained. I call it content substance classifier. And so basically, you can give it content A and content B, and it can tell you which one is more substantial and which one is fluffy. You know what I mean by fluff, yeah? It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah, of course I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
words, no meaning, there's no content. It's just
yeah.
prattling on about nothing.
One of the biggest things we do is when we're looking at sites to acquire certain sites is to reduce the size of the whole website. So we're looking at, let's say, we're starting off with a category level. That category, it's not ranking, it's topic dilution, let's delete that. Then specific pages that might be cannibalizing or thinking that there's no value to this, deleting those. And then, like you said, we're going then at heading level and paragraph level, sentence level, all the way down in time to word level of just being, why is that fluff on? Could you answer that question in less words, but still keeping the main part of what's needed on that page? Can we change that from a 2,000 word article to a 1,000 word article, but keeping the substance of what's needed? And that's kind of, we're looking to acquire those sites all the time. The ones that have gone writing, because everyone says word count says it's got to be 5,000 words, so they write 4,500 words of fluff and there's no substance to it. So
Yeah.
I love removing fluff.
As a teenager, I've been made aware of a concept by no other than Isaac Asimov in his Foundation series, which is incredible. I don't like when did he write that, in the 50s or 60s? Um, and there's a scene in there where there was an envoy from the emperor visiting a Foundation outpost, and he was doing the political talk, the diplomatic talk, and they recorded all his speech. And the linguist in the foundation analyzed his content of all the things he was saying, and they used mathematics to do natural language processing, amazing stuff for a sci-fi book. And they said when they cross everything out, when they equalize all the formulas, when they distill everything, he said nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
And so it's like he was there for 3 days. He spoke a lot, much talk, and when you know equalize everything, he didn't actually say anything of substance. And this is a problem with web content because we have both humans and machines who have attention patterns effectively. Humans are drawn to like visual cues, like bullet points and so on. Models are drawn to. They are literally transformer models. That's in their DNA. They're drawn to, and they run on attention patterns. That's the foundation paper that kickstarted this whole revolution is called "Attention is All You Need." So it's these attention patterns in the model's multidimensional structure is that draws the model's focus on certain things and make it flow from there. So we'll see the page of content, and the model will see the page of content, but the model will have different attention patterns. That's worth investigating and understanding what draws their attention, what draws human attention. But I suppose if you had a very long blah 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 content that doesn't really say much, you're kind of getting lost, especially lost in the middle. That we found that it's fascinating research that came out quite recently is that models pay attention to the beginning and to the end, and they kind of like get lost in the middle. And I think same happens for humans.
yeah,
I did a follow up to my research that I have an old article saying here's why nobody reads your content because people don't read anything. They just scan things and see they're trying to like content is trying to sell itself to the reader, and if it's sold, then the reader reads the whole thing. But up to that point, it's just scanning, and people often scroll down and read just the bottom or like the comments to get the TLDR out of that. Now we've got AI sitting between the content and the humans, and humans saying, just give me the TLDR. And the model does the utility, basically preventing time wasting for a human by digesting that comment for us. So you have to think about that. It's like if you have pointless content on your page, that's going to be trimmed down by both users and AI. So what are you even doing with that? So that's very instructive on how we should write for the web. Actually, journalists know how to write because they use the inverted pyramid. Get to the
yeah.
point, main news, and then the secondary details, and anything tertiary that's not important, leave it to the bottom because back in the day, it might get cut off and not make it to the news. So you want the most important, most salient parts to be at the very top.
Yeah.
If you follow that principle, you'll be good with in the AI age.
Yeah, there's a lot of like teachings with regards to semantic SEO, and they always say in the macro contents at the top of the page, get all that information in. The micro then is covering all the secondaries. But I've got two last questions on the future of AI SEO. Before you mentioned the yes and no, and let's say you said that you got a yes for 68 and then you got a no for 32 as being an example. Would you, on the ones where you got a no, try to go in and influence if you wanted it to be a yes? Would you be going, okay, I've got now optimization that I can be doing, progressive optimization, maybe new pages or whatever, to try and go, why are these 38 or 32, sorry, showing no? And then going, okay, I now need to influence them to be yeses to build that score up.
Yeah, definitely go after that. There are two paths to it. One is very difficult and long. I already mentioned it, influencing model training data. That takes time and a lot of effort. But you have to do it. If you don't do it, you're not gonna catch up to it at any time. So that's a slow burn type effort. Um, what you can do more immediately is you can make quick on-page changes and influence RAG, and you can do third-party citations, even though if you're not one of the cited URLs entering because the model chose not to include you, you can still do a form of outreach similar to how you do link building and getting yourself into the results that are already cited. Now here's the trick. when you're doing citation mining, you're probing the model for a variety of different prompts. And this is what I mean, like you should be prompting the models and surveying that, but not to track the rankings or visibility over time, or talk silly things like prompt volumes.
Yeah.
What is a prompt volume? There is no prompt volume. There is like probably an entity volume, like a collection of all its. But anyway, so let's say you've done your prompting and you're starting to understand. Let's say you've done 1,000 cycles of prompting and you're starting to build a map of what are the top domains that are consistently in the top by a number of citations constantly being chosen. And the choice is a combination of being in the search results in the first place. You're not going to get selected by the model if you're not in search. You have to be performing well in SEO to start with. So that's the first aspect. And the second aspect is, okay, so those are the domains that are consistently at the top of the leaderboard in terms of number of times they've been chosen. And then second level, a little bit deeper, a bit more granular, is to understand which URLs from those domains were the ones with the highest number of citation counts when probed by you for the set of prompts that you found relevant to the entities that you have that are relevant to the fan out queries, organic queries, and paid queries to the products and services that your brand offers. This is all connected. So what do you do with that information? You have two options. You can do both. One is create lookalike content that really looks and feels like the ones that is constantly being cited and included in the favorable responses. And the second one is finding the domains where such pages are accepted, make one on that domain. Pay a bit of money, negotiate, do your old school guest posts, do a bit of digital PR, make a partnership, offer free content, make a connection, whatever it takes. Get into the citations of the top cited domains and piggyback, Trojan horse your way into visibility while you're working on the big, slow, and momentous endeavor of changing the model's mind from its training data, which will take a year or two, I guarantee you.
So,
Unless you
so
have huge budgets like big companies like Apple and Amazon and so on.
on that, just to add a third one, instead of reaching out to the site the website that's being cited and trying to get a new post, another one is reaching out to the webmaster of that site and seeing if you can do what's some people call like a niche edit or a link insert, and trying to get a snippet of content in that existing article that's being cited and trying to say why you're better in there. That is the URL that's being cited as well. So that's just another potential option. I mean, we try and do both. We try and do, let's say, new guest posts or new press releases looking very similar to what's already been cited and trying to outrank that one, so hopefully this one gets cited, and then doing like an optimization, trying to come back with something to the owner to say, this is slightly out of date, here's a newer version of it. And sometimes they'll end up putting your brand in there and that side. But one, you mentioned treewalker.ai, and you mentioned that you can do it where it doesn't go to the search and then it goes to the search and shows the difference. And you just mentioned there about influencing it and it can take a while. If it was showing positive in the search but wasn't when it wasn't able to go to the search, how long does it take approximately for it to get into the training models? Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Is it literally the next time they run the training data, then it'll be using that information?
Yeah. So I have one case study.
Yeah.
One. And I think we got a little bit lucky as well. So it's a brand based in Germany called Awire. They do custom sports jerseys, and they produce, like, their German brand. They produce the top quality stuff. Like their jerseys are sublimation printing. It's just the best. And so their business model is they have like an online 3D configurator, and you build your own little design, and you'll make an order, decide for your cycling team or your soccer team or whatever. And so you submit, and then it arrives. It doesn't matter where in the world. So they're distributing their goods worldwide. But guess what? During this probing, the yes/no probabilities, tree walker investigations, associative mining, and so on, we've been noticing that GPT and Gemini are constantly excluding them from making recommendations when the user is outside of Europe and Germany. And we're like, okay, what's going on? Try this, try that, nothing works. And so we decided to just go on like, sort of like a lean building campaign. And we did just, associative, I don't even know what to call, like associative PR, like Hawaii, USA, Hawaii,
Yeah,
America, just
yeah,
mentioning things that we want to be. And also we like Hawaii, Nike, Adidas, putting them with the big boys.
yeah,
Because we noticed those fluctuate least in the when we do the visibility tracking. So you do visibility tracking day by day or week by week, and you're seeing high level of oscillations for low authority brands, and you see low level of oscillations for high authority brands. So Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour were sitting right at the top, like glued in. It was like looking at a guitar string. The ranking charts weren't moving. Only at the bottom stuff was just undulating, right? And so what we did is we started that campaign. It didn't like I almost gave up on it. It took us like 6 months. What happened? Obviously, it should have been in hindsight. It should have been obvious to me. Nothing happens until Google releases a new model because you,
yeah,
you don't you don't get to influence the model that's already been launched. That one's frozen in time back in its training data. No matter what you do, so once the model. So this was Gemini 2. When Gemini 2.5 was released, when we switch off the grounding with search, then Awaya started becoming one of the natively suggested results based on raw model memory, no search grounding. And so that was a big celebration moment. But so that took 6 months. I don't know how long it takes. I'm saying like we were maybe a little bit lucky with timing, a little bit lucky with the fact that it got in. Um, but what did work was basic SEO. And then it worked within the week. So what we did is we removed the um, GmbH and we placed LLC, and we put American phone number and the address because they have a local address in the US. And that basic, it's kind of like local SEO optimization. So we did that, and when model picked up on that, especially because Google gets full cached HTML of the page. So when it's grounding with a page, it gets to see those signals. And so when we ask, would you recommend this page? Yes. So when grounded with search, within 1 week, we got them in. Um, Ungrounded, natively selected, took six months ish. I could be 5, could be 7. I'm not exactly sure, but about that. I would say to be safe, if you influence the model's behavior within a year, you did well.
yeah. That makes sense. So anyone who's watching this, we hope you like the video. This was actually only meant to be a 10 to 15 minute video, but I absolutely love speaking with Dan Petrovic. He is always 2 steps ahead of the game. Make certain there is a few other videos. Check the links in the description. There's one on being a dadtrepreneur. So as being a father and also an entrepreneur, I ask him certain questions with how to raise kids in the AI era. There's one about how to optimize for the LLMs and then how AI is impacting link building. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.